we are in this, what I really think is the battle at the Black Gate, the great battle of our time. We are in a spiritual war. We have been in a spiritual war for millennia.
All around me are familiar faces.
At the roots of international terrorism, now on BBC Two, Time Watch traces the often brutal work and political influence of the Gladio network of secret agents.
How there is a long record of CIA involvement with suspected drug traffickers and drug trafficking organizations. And this is a history that's mostly unknown to the American public.
The criminal underworld of black markets and the leaders behind the movement.
That's where they brought me. These were two traffickers. They're not just sex traffickers, but they're also very tied in with Asian mob and drug trafficking throughout the provinces in Canada and into the US and abroad, trafficking women, trafficking girls, trafficking drugs. So this is where I was brought. So basically I was brought right back in to what I was running to escape from.
The very idea that doctors used to wear the white robes, the white, is all based in their symbolism. You're born in white and you die in black. Right, well, that's the Knights Templar symbols. They got you at both fucking ends, dude. You don't know nothing about secret societies. You're born to the white coated Templar and you die when they haul you into the graveyard in black.
The opioid crisis has taken the lives of more than 500,000 Americans over the last 2 decades. And it's really an epidemic that began with prescription painkillers. Now, their use then led to overdose deaths from heroin and more recently to more powerful drugs like fentanyl. But of the prescription drugs, none was better known than OxyContin, made by Purdue Pharma.
And I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad.
Check it out. This is the official cross of the Swedish Order of Freemasons.
So this you can find in old runestones that are thousands of years old. So this symbol is very...
This symbol?
Yeah, this symbol.
George White worked with the Truth Drug Committee here at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in the nation's capital. They experimented with mescaline, scopolamine, and marijuana on unwitting victims. The goal remained the same. As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation.
We live in the sunlit world of what we believe to be reality. But there is, unseen by most, an underworld, a place that is just as real, but not as brightly lit. A dark side, if you will. philosophers and psychologists have identified the underworld of our own minds, which they have often referred to as the unconscious, or the subconscious, or the inner realm of the shadow. Our planet also has a very real subterranean network. What is fascinating to me is that virtually every major city in the world is riddled with underground tunnel systems, and for the most part, they are built for practical purposes: transit systems, underground passageways, subways, sewer systems, etc. But there are also numerous classified deep underground military facilities built by the Army, Navy, FEMA, NORAD, and militaries all over the world. So it seems the underworld of our planet is indeed a good strategic place to hide away your secrets. There are even many private underground facilities built by, say, the Mormons in Salt Lake City, the Catholics in Vatican City, the Scientologists in northern New Mexico.
There are a few unusual features at this compound. This building is set into the side of a mountain which leads to an underground vault. We're also told that there is a house specifically built for L. Ron Hubbard's return. Even though he died 27 years ago, he apparently is coming back. And he'll be guided here by huge symbols cut into the landscape, seen only from the air.
It is also interesting to note that many religions, tribes, secret societies, and even cults were born in hiding, eventually creating their own underworld networks for the purposes of survival from the threat of prosecution, persecution, or discovery by various authorities or invaders. Some of these networks were innocent of any evil doing and may have actually been trying to simply preserve vast knowledge or treasure. Others, however, are not so innocent. And their signatures can still be seen to this day. There are numerous ancient underground tunnel systems, underground caverns, and even cities, which have also been discovered around the world, such as in Turkey, northern France, Poland, Ethiopia, the mountains of southern Jordan, Orvieto, Italy, etc. Many ancient myths and legends also tell of underground places, caverns, caves, and even subterranean worlds from which certain cultures believe they first emerged from. If we take on board the old Hermetic concept of correspondence, such as within, so without, as without, so within, could it be there is a connection between the state of our inner world and the state of our outer world? So there is the internal underworld, the physical underworld, which we have just glanced at briefly, but then there's also the criminal underworld, a world that is not separate from our surface-dwelling society, but that indeed runs parallel with it in more ways than I believe that we can possibly imagine.
I'm going to give you some information that you've never heard before. It's going to shock you, I'm sure. I know it will. But it's true. Everything I have has been documented, and it comes from confidential sources or informants. They are reliable, credible sources. I served 27 and a half years in the FBI, retired in 1979. At the time of my retirement, I was in charge of most of Southern California, except for the two most southern counties. And I basically gave the story. And the story was, of course, that this satanic cult group had come into the house that night, got out of hand, they popped drugs at midnight. And it was, according to Helena, her initiation into the satanic movement. And you know, folks, people just came out of the woodwork. From the East Coast to the West Coast, north to south, people contacted me, gave me the same basic story about satanic cults and about their ceremonies, multi-generational, ritual abuse, and the same stories over and over again from people who did not know each other. So I said, there's got to be something to this. And so I started delving into satanic cults. From there, I went to pedophilia, pornography, prostitution, corruption in the courts, law enforcement, corrupt, prosecutors, corrupt. And I basically learned through my research and through my work on the street. By the way, I do more than just research books. I'm out there. I talk to people. And I basically learned that the satanic cult movement in the United States is very, very active. And for you folks up here in Canada, there is a network between the United States and Canada. There's an extensive amount of traffic between the Seattle, Washington area and Vancouver, BC, among other places. And this is just a drop in the bucket of the information that I developed. I said to myself, where did this all start? What's going on? I don't understand. And by the way, in furnishing data and information, specifics and documents, and the truth to officials, including the FBI, the U.S. Department of Justice, I'm ignored.
When I was as young as I can remember is when the trafficking and the abuse began. There were a lot of agencies that became involved, such as Child Protective Services, and there was a lot of police involvement. I was basically being passed around. I was born into what I refer to as a sex trafficking and international organized crime ring. And because the individuals within this ring, because they are all connected and interconnected throughout the provinces of Canada into the United States and abroad, these traffickers are. It doesn't matter where you run. In my case, there's the involvement of a lot of corrupt government officials, people in positions of leadership, power, authority, and trust, people within the church, Knights of Columbus are some of them, and others, lawyers, doctors, police officers, politicians. Some of these people are in those positions, and even currently, right, they're in those government positions who are actively involved still.
I know that much of this might be hard to hear and come to terms with, but we must remember, only when the unseen is seen can the truth be made known, and only when the truth is made known can this evil be defeated once and for all. A good metaphor that will help you understand the nature of good versus evil and truth versus the lie is to observe the properties of light and shadow. Look at it this way. Wherever you find light, you will also find the shadow that the light casts. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow is that extends from that light. So how does this all connect? Are there connections between everything we've looked at thus far? Isn't this supposed to be a documentary series on the medical mafia? Well, my friends, we can't look at the medical mafia and the corruption within the pharmaceutical industry without also looking at how the criminal underworld works and how criminal psychology works. We also cannot leave aside the study of the many occult elements that have woven their way into the fabric of our most cherished institutions over time. And based on what I and many others have found, it is indeed all connected in the end. Now, when it comes to the underworld, however benign and practical as it might all appear to be on the surface, no pun intended, the truth is this dark underground netherworld is and always has been utilized by nefarious criminal elements and even secret cults.
We are going on a journey deep underground at the U.S.-Mexico border into the tangle of tunnels used to traffic not only drugs but also high-level drug kingpins themselves. Nearly 200 of these tunnels have been discovered, and ABC's Matt Gutman takes us now for an up-close look.
In that beige garage is a multi-million-dollar hole in the ground, and we're about to stuff ourselves into it.
My God, is it dark and claustrophobic in here. And this is terrifying.
It is coming in late today of what authorities are now calling the longest underground tunnel ever discovered along the U.S.-Mexico border. You'll see it tonight, nearly a mile long, 70 feet down, with electricity, ventilation, even an elevator. So where did it lead? Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas tonight.
Tonight, you're looking inside the longest illegal underground tunnel ever discovered on the southern border. From Tijuana, Mexico to San Diego, nearly a mile long. Authorities suspect it's been used by cartels to smuggle tons of drugs into the U.S.
They'll try anything they can to get their illicit products into the United States.
About 70 feet below ground, a highly sophisticated tunnel built with an elevator, rail system, ventilation, electrical cables, and panels. Likely a multi-million-dollar construction project by drug cartels which have the resources of Fortune 500 companies.
These criminal elements do not only include your average street gang or low-level mafia, but also include a very sophisticated and elite level as well that I think most people can't really wrap their minds around.
language is that? I don't know. Where the hell are we?
I think we're in the city. Maybe some kind of underground base or something.
There gotta be a way out.
I'm just hoping nobody saw us dropping in.
Operation Steel Fist has been a complete success. All security stations stand down to operational function. We have eliminated the terrorists.
Okay. We got them. We wiped them out. All right.
It's a win, man. They got to meet the A-team.
I'm hearing something.
Our projections show that by the year 2025, not only America, but the entire planet will be under the protection and the dominion of this power alliance. The gains have been substantial, both for ourselves and for you, the human power elite. You have given us entree to the resources we need in our ongoing quest for multidimensional expansion. And in return, the per capita income of each of you here tonight has grown, and this year alone, by an average 39%. The underground terrorist network has been destroyed here on the West Coast. We are off crisis alert. The situation is normal again.
How you doing, boys? I didn't know you'd been recruited. Welcome aboard.
Earth is our stepping through.
I gotta tell you, I sure am proud to be here. You seen the whole place?
I haven't had a chance to yet.
Come on, I'll show you around.
Now, we've already looked at the corruption within the medical industrial complex and the pharmaceutical industry in this series, which I refer to as the white market of organized crime and the drug trade. In this chapter, I want to focus on the criminal underworld, the world unseen, the black market side of things. Is it all just random crime made up by various competing criminal factions, all out for their own agendas? Or is there a possible connection between at least some of these two markets, these two worlds, if you will? If both worlds are built on a compartmentalized hierarchical structure, it stands to reason that those who sit at the top of both of these enterprises would be the elite level of their respective domains. Do these elite crime bosses ever shake hands and work together for mutual interests? Could the street level of these various criminal networks be, in some cases at least, merely agents or pawns of these higher level mafias and cults that I have been outlining thus far? Put more simply, could the street level drug traffickers, the weapons traffickers, the human traffickers, etc., be in the employ of a much more secretive and elite cabal that deals in both markets? As much as we hear about feuds between various cartels, gangs, criminal mafias, and even various secret societies throughout history, is it possible that there are also some strategic alliances from time to time? What if what we call the white market and the black market of the criminal world are ultimately two different gloves, controlled by the same brain? No matter how you look at it, be it organized or just random and chaotic, when we investigate these questions, we are studying the nature of human evil itself. As we learn about the shadow of the criminal underworld, we are also ultimately learning about the shadow within all of us, about our own shadow. As Carl Jung once said in an attempt to give us some hope in this plight, the most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed.
using unknowing Canadian citizens as test subjects. Cameron had developed a new procedure which caught the eye of the MK Ultra researchers, as well as the Canadian intelligence community. He was hired by the CIA and the Canadian government to further explore the treatment, which he called psychic driving.
First, Cameron proposed that they would use intensive electroshock and LSD, and other disorienting drugs to, in his terms, de-pattern individuals, basically to wipe the slate clean.
Now, I am sure you may have heard of some of these mind control projects, such as MKUltra and Operation Mockingbird, projects which were conducted by this cult of intelligence for many decades in order to discover how human psychology really works and how to covertly craft and shape the social narrative, control the human mind, and how to induce their desired behaviors in the general public. Numerous films and books have been put out there for some time now on the subject. However, there are also a few other important secret programs which are lesser known that I will be pointing out shortly. But before I do, you might be asking what any of this has to do with the medical cult. Well, it has everything to do with it, in my humble opinion. If you remember in Chapter 6 of this series, where I point out the connections between the medics and the Knights of Malta, between the Knights of Malta and the Vatican, and, via many a Vatican insider, the connections between the Vatican and the Nazi regime, and also to the underground criminal network, as well as the Luciferian network, otherwise known as the Occult Satanic Empire. In this section, I want to highlight the Vatican Knights of Malta connection to various intelligence agencies like the CIA, British intelligence, MI5, MI6, Mossad, etc., with a focus on the CIA. Spycraft and intelligence gathering goes all the way back to ancient times. You can find historical and even literary accounts of espionage, intrigue, and spy networks in some of the earliest recorded histories from all over the world. In 1993, the CIA Historical Review Program released a paper written by Rose Mary Sheldon in 1989. The paper is titled Spying in Mesopotamia, and when it comes to secrecy, she has something very interesting to point out, where she says, as soon as man learned to create documents, he began to classify them. This is another indication that gathering intelligence is as old as civilization itself. Techniques regarded as completely modern have actually existed for thousands of years. Archaeological discoveries in the Near East, especially in Syria, have uncovered evidence of societies where espionage activities were rampant. Intelligence gathering was second nature to any ruler who wanted to protect the safety and independence of his city and who valued his own life. Throughout history, both royal and priestly classes have employed agents of intelligence and espionage in order to be able to seek out traitors and rebels, to infiltrate behind enemy lines, and to locate vulnerable tribes that could be conquered, looted, and enslaved. Egyptian spies made many significant contributions to espionage spycraft. Egyptian spies were the first to develop the extensive use of poisons, including toxins derived from plants and even snakes, to carry out assassinations or acts of sabotage. The early Greeks relied on deception and infiltration as a primary means of achieving successful surprise attacks on their enemies. And so renowned were Greek employments of deceptive strategies that Greek literature from antiquity boasts of its many various intelligence and espionage exploits. The legendary story of the Trojan horse, for example, which was a wooden structure given to the city of Troy as a gift, but which contained several hundred Greek soldiers gaining safe passage into the heavily fortified rival city, which became the symbol of Grecian intelligence prowess. We can find many similar accounts throughout the history of the world, and it is clear that the ancient knowledge of this spycraft has been well preserved and perfected over time. This branch of military operations, which has always been in the employ of the ruling classes as a sort of private security apparatus, is of the highest import in today's kind of warfare. Warfare today is more about information management and controlling and influencing the political and cultural narrative than it is about fighting overt wars with physical tanks and bombs. This secret knowledge can be used to protect a nation, or it can be used to infiltrate and overthrow a nation, possibly even the world. In my current reading of the hidden history of these various intelligence networks, they all stem from ancient cults and various royal and papal families, bloodlines, and secret societies. As usual, their symbolism tells you the whole story, doesn't it? These connections start to become clear when you look simply at the membership list of the Knights of Malta and other Masonic and occult orders. Let's start off with James Jesus Angleton, for example, who was a Knight of Malta and also ended up becoming Chief of Counterintelligence for the CIA from 1954 to 1974. His official position within the organization was the Associate Deputy Director of Operations for Counterintelligence. He grew up in Milan, Italy, studied as a boarder at Malvern College in England before attending the home of the Order of the Skull and Bones, Yale University. He was employed by the various successor organizations to the OSS, which preceded the CIA, and eventually becoming one of the founding officers of the Central Intelligence Agency in 1947. In May of 1949, he was made head of Staff A of the CIA's Office of Special Operations, where he was responsible for the collection of foreign intelligence and a liaison with the CIA's counterpart organizations.
For 40 years, secret terrorist organizations, many trained by Western intelligence agencies, have manipulated the political control of European sovereign states by a campaign of terror and murder. Originally part of a secret network, these groups changed from being defenders of state security into attackers of the established political order. Until 2 years ago, that secret network was generally known by the single word, Gladio. On November the 9th, 1990, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giulio Andreotti, revealed to his own parliament and the world the existence of a top-secret European-wide network of secret agents. It was called Gladio. This network of stay-behind groups was intended to fight a Soviet invasion of Western Europe. Andreotti's announcement led to an immediate reaction in the capitals of Europe. The suspicion was that some parts of the Gladio structures were involved in internal subversion.
I came in and sent by General Donovan. Andy Birding was the first X2 guy who came into Rome. And he'd been an old AP correspondent, and I thought I could trust him, that he was a good guy. And so we turned over to him everything we had on the German stay-behinds. Then Jim Angleton appeared in August. He began recruiting fascists because he figured that the best way to control the communists was to hire fascists. One of the most tough ones was Prince Valerio Borghese, who ran what was known as the 10th Flotilla. These are the guys that would execute partisans and hang them from lampposts all over Italy. From that day of his joining Jim Angleton, or the X2 part of OSS, he ran the secret police for the next 40 years.
Gladio was a joint brainchild, but its most intense architect was Angleton. And Angleton, as most people know, was a sort of a professional paranoiac. One of his favorite sayings used to be that even paranoiacs have enemies. And Angleton was a fellow who felt that you couldn't trust anybody, particularly not any foreign country.
Beginning in 1951, Angleton was also a liaison with Israel's Mossad and Shin Bet agencies. They called it the Israeli Desk, and these were crucial relationships that he managed for the remainder of his career. In general, Angleton's career at the CIA can be divided into 3 areas of responsibility: foreign intelligence activities, counterintelligence, and domestic intelligence activities. There's also William Wild Bill Donovan, another Knight of Malta, who actually formed the CIA and was considered the father of the CIA. He was also the head of the OSS before he was used to create the CIA. Another Knight of Malta, William F. Buckley Jr., was an American author and, quote, conservative commentator. A student at Yale as well, and an FBI informant. He was also a prominent member of the Skull and Bones, and he founded the political magazine National Review in 1955. There are a few writers today who think that Buckley was the spearhead of the CIA's synthetic conservative movement, which was designed to penetrate America and was built to replace the classic non-interventionist old right coalition of Americans who were very much opposed to many of the aspects of the government, corporate welfare, state welfare, etc., that started under FDR and Truman. Now, no matter your particular political persuasion, it is important to note that this intelligence cult and these secret fraternities have players on both sides of the political spectrum. They see it as the grand chessboard, and you're either their agents know how to play either part extremely well. And the way I see it, they all hold their true allegiances to these various secret cults and fraternities who fund them.
Throughout his entire life, Cecil Rhodes spent most of his vast income to promote the ruling class ideas of John Ruskin. Many people are familiar with the world-famous Rhodes Scholarships, which were established to promote the less controversial aspects of John Ruskin's dream. But very few are familiar with the fact that in 1891, Cecil Rhodes established a secret society to promote the rest of that dream. Dr. Quigley explains, in this secret society, Rhodes was to be leader. Stead, Brett, Lord Esher, and Milner were to form an executive committee. Arthur Lord Balfour, Sir Harry Johnston, Lord Rothschild, Albert Lord Grey, and others were listed as potential members of a circle of initiates, while there was to be an outer circle known as the Association of Helpers, later organized by Milner as the Round Table Organization. Here then was the classic pattern of political conspiracies throughout all history. At the center, usually depicted as the all-seeing eye, there is a tiny group in complete control, with one man as the undisputed leader. Next comes a circle of secondary leadership that for the most part is completely unaware of an inner core. They are led to believe that they are the innermost ring. In time, as these conspiracies are built from the center out, they form additional rings of organization. Those in the outer echelons usually are poor idealistic souls with an honest desire to improve the world. They never suspect an inner control for sinister purposes, and only those few who demonstrate a ruthless capacity for higher leadership are ever allowed to see it.
We also have Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself, father of the American socialist experiment. You can go and see Professor Anthony Sutton's books for more details. But the story of the man who ran his campaigns and who then kept him in power is less well known, that of James Farley. Farley was a Knight of Malta, a business executive with Coca-Cola and a political kingmaker. He was Roosevelt's companion manager for all of his major elections, including his presidential victories in 1932 and 1936. He would go on to be Postmaster General of the U.S. and the national chairman of the Democratic Party, which was at the time the highest position a Roman Catholic politician had ever reached. He was one of the first Roman Catholics to rise to national political prominence. He became the kingmaker who launched FDR to the presidency and the man who brought Coca-Cola to Europe. Another example is John McCone, who was a very powerful industrialist and one who was part of the military-industrial complex before he became the head of the CIA. McCone was another Knight of Malta, head of the CIA from 1961 to 1965, and was the one in charge of the intelligence agency during the assassination of JFK. Many still hold suspicions about the man to this day. We also have William J. Casey, who was the CIA director from 1981 to 1987 under Ronald Reagan. He was also a Knight of Malta, a Catholic Jesuit trained at Fordham University. Casey was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he was suspected by some of involvement with the controversial Iran-Contra affair, in which Reagan administration personnel secretly traded arms to the Islamic Republic of Iran and secretly diverted some of the resulting income to aid the rebel Contras in Nicaragua, which was in violation of U.S. law. Casey was called in to testify before Congress about his knowledge of the affair, and on the 15th of December 1986, one day before Casey was scheduled to testify before Congress, he suffered 2 seizures and was hospitalized. Casey died less than 24 hours after former colleague Richard Secord testified that Casey supported the illegal aiding of the Contras. In 1982, U.S. Attorney General William French Smith wrote Casey a letter establishing a policy of not reporting, investigating, or prosecuting drug crimes committed by CIA agents, assets, and contractors. The most comprehensive allegations were reported by investigative journalist Gary Webb in a series for the Mercury News of San Jose, California, and later a book titled Dark Alliance. And when it comes to behind-the-scenes intrigue, few, of course, could hold a flame to Allen Dulles, who was a Knight of Malta, and who was also the first civilian CIA director from 1953 to 1961.
Mr. Dulles, would you approve Congressman Lindsay's suggestion of a watchdog congressional committee over the CIA?
Well, I do not favor it, but I think that is a matter for the Congress and the President to decide primarily.
Many believe he was involved in at least the cover-up of JFK's death, and some writers allege that Dulles's job, simply put, was to infiltrate and hijack the US government on behalf of the same elite clandestine interests that make up what we call today the deep state.
In the wake of World War II, the US government is engaged in a large number of secret medical experiments designed to help win the Cold War. Developing techniques for mind control to create a so-called Manchurian candidate.
The director of Central Intelligence in April of 1953, Allen Dulles, gave a talk in which he said that we were in a battle for the control of men's minds, that's his term, and that we were losing the battle.
Dulles wastes no time in signing a secret executive order creating Project MK Ultra, the goal to leave no stone unturned in the area of mind and behavior control.
Here's an interesting quote from the Devil's Chessboard. Your darkest suspicions about how the world operates are likely an underestimate. Yes, there is an amorphous group of unelected corporate lawyers, bankers, and intelligence and military officials who form an American deep state, setting real limits on the rare politicians who ever try to get out of line. We, of course, also can't leave out George H.W. Bush Sr., who was also a Knight of Malta, member of the Skull and Bones at Yale, as was his son, George W., who actually even admitted it publicly on live television.
We were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
Bush Sr. was also a member of Bohemian Grove. He was the CIA director before he was president, and he was later knighted by the Queen of England as Knight of the Grand Cross of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath. Now, why would an American president be going down to Buckingham Palace, of all places, to get knighted by the Queen of England? Coincidentally, it was he who famously coined the term New World Order in modern times.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
So no, conspiracy theorists didn't make it up. It came straight from the horse's mouth.
The world economy, not just the world economy in the world, it occurs every 3 or 4 generations. 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people die, and now's the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. And we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it.
Now, many a Nazi was also crowned a Knight of Malta back in the day, such as General Reinhard Gehlen, who was one of Hitler's chief intelligence officers, who had struck a deal with the Americans called Operation Sunrise. The principal negotiators were Knight of Malta Allen Dulles, and Knight of Malta William Casey of the OSS, Sir William Stevenson for the British, and German SS General Karl Wolff. Their negotiations enabled Gehlen to bring his entire Nazi intelligence apparatus, unpurged and without interruption, into the service of the American superpower, according to the authors of The General Was a Spy, and also corroborated by U.S. Army Colonel James Bo Greitz, who was also instrumental in exposing the CIA connection to drug smuggling and the funding of assassination teams using the proceeds from the illicit drug trade.
I mean, it boggles the mind for me to believe that my elected officials are actually allowing this to happen. It frightens me and it makes me angry simultaneously. Drug money was being utilized by the Central Intelligence Agency, i.e. Air America, at the time during Southeast Asia to fund assassination teams. Now, are you trying to tell me that the United States government is actually involved in drug smuggling?
That's precisely what I'm saying. The proof is in Ollie North's diaries that were not shred. Lawrence Walsh, the independent prosecutor, revealed 500 entries where Ollie North said that illegal narcotics were being used to fund the Contra operations. When I commanded Special Forces in Latin America in 1976, George Bush was head of the CIA. We were running an Operation Watchtower down there then. CIA contract aircraft at night flying below 500 feet would push them underneath the radar mask, came through the Darien Mountains, and they were carrying cocaine. They made more than one flight a night. Manuel Noriega was the CIA's front man. And I'm almost ashamed to say this because soldiers have this tunnel vision. We are told to do or die. Never ask a question why. I was out there in Burma, the first U.S. agent ever to be in the Golden Triangle. Here I had Kunsa, the most heinous drug criminal in the history of the world, and he had no prisoners. So I almost didn't ask him about the drugs. I was surprised when I did, with video cameras running. He said, U.S. government officials are my best customers.
Let's finish with Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was also a Knight of Malta. He was President Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, a CIA operative, Bilderberg Group attendee, director of the Trilateral Commission from 1973 to 76, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, a member of Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission, Jesuit trained at Georgetown University, a New York recruiter of Barack Obama, and so much more. And he had this lovely message to share with humanity way back in 2008.
And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control a million people, literally. It was easier to control a million people than physically to kill a million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill a million people than to control a million people. It is easier to kill than to control. It is easier to kill than to control.
So there we have it, just a brief synopsis of the numerous connections that exist between the Vatican, the Knights of Malta, the cult of intelligence, private industry, senior offices in the media and politics that go all the way up to the presidency itself, and the criminal underworld of black market drugs, arms trading, and so much more. Who do these spooks really work for? And to what end? However you look at it and choose to interpret these historical events and the people and agencies behind them, we are left to look at our present situation and ask ourselves, how did we really get here? How did things get this bad? The main point here is that it is under the watch of these watchers that all manner of corruption, crime, fraud, theft, killing, war, foreign conflicts, foreign and domestic terrorism, entrenched oligarchy, and authoritarian rule have been allowed to not only remain in existence, but leave us to wonder if much of this had not been artificially created, or at least permitted to become the standard in allegedly free Western nations, possibly for the purposes of overthrowing those free Western nations so that they would better fit into the centralized vision of this ancient cult. Let's now look at some of the activities of this cult of intelligence that may help us better understand just how we got to where we are today.
This is a matter, of course, that allows and provides the White House and our government with almost unlimited power in investigating caches of arms and drugs. Now, why would they do that? Well, I can tell you why they did it. Because the CIA is the biggest drug dealer in the world. The CIA has been bringing drugs into this country for years, going back to the Vietnam War and prior to that. I personally sent the Spectre Committee the names of 16 individuals who had first-hand knowledge of CIA drug operations, bringing drugs into this country. Now, one of those individuals was called and asked to testify. So, that's the way that the government is now controlling the situation, has been for some time.
Jim, what exactly, what is mind control? How do you accomplish this?
Well, you know, in ancient times, they used the sword and they used the gun and they used other methods like religion for pushing the populace around and getting people to do what was wanted. But in recent times, in the 20th century, there are new technologies that provide the expertise to control people totally without their knowledge. Means of electronic entrainment, brain control implants, methods of advertising that manipulate us against our will. And this isn't science fiction, this is something that's very documented. Information is misrepresented, that takes away our degree of choice. The media does that all the time. Absolutely, that's manipulating the information that we have available to us.
Let me finish this section off with this final point. Think about what happened during the pandemic. There were so many aspects to it that surprised many, but one thing that really stood out to me was that this was the largest intelligence gathering operation in world history.
If you left the house any time over the last 2 years and took your cell phone with you, odds are the federal government was tracking you. A report to the House of Commons Ethics Committee shows our movements were closely monitored during the pandemic to help Public Health Agency of Canada understand travel patterns. The report reveals the agency was able to view a detailed snapshot of people's behavior, including visits to the grocery store, gatherings with family and friends, time spent at home, and trips away from home. MPs on the committee were surprised at just how much detail was available. They're recommending in the future the government should tell Canadians that it's collecting the data and give them an option to opt out.
And one can only ask, what was this whole thing really all about? With study of the history of this cult of intelligence and its many black projects is labyrinthine and would alone take a lifetime to complete. We only know bits and pieces of what they want us to know. The main point, however, for me bringing all of this to your attention is to point out the fact that regardless of what the cover story might be for these mind control and intelligence gathering projects, if we are to take the statement of the Club of Rome seriously, where they declare humanity to be the main enemy of concern, then it really isn't a far stretch to conclude that the main objective of it all is to gather intelligence about the human mind, how it works, how it can be manipulated and hacked, and how this knowledge can be used to maintain control over us all. Given how much time, energy, and money has gone into this inquiry by the world elites from ancient history to the present day, this also might then indicate just how powerful and valuable your unique consciousness really is. And should each of us begin our own intelligence operation and inquiry into who and what we really are, perhaps the power of these dark sorcerers would cease to exist in our lives. And just maybe, on some grand cosmic scale, that is indeed the entire point of this game that we find ourselves in.
Francois Mitterrand, the president of France, says, "The health of citizens is a commodity which is bought and sold." And mind control advocate Dr. Jose Delgado, in his book Physical Control of the Mind Towards a Psycho-Civilized Society, simply puts it this way: man does not have the right to develop his own mind. Now, it turns out that the term or word Medici, refers to the 13th century Florentine patrician family who became one of the most powerful bankers as well as patrons of the arts and who provided many tyrannical popes. This word, the Medici, actually comes from that, meaning medical doctors. So again, here we have the age-old connection, coming down from the Venetians, coming down from the Phoenicians, coming down from the ancient Sumerians. We have the families related, descended by blood from these ancient sources. And they're still up to their business, right down into modern times, massacring, creating rituals, treating people as if they're just cattle ready for sacrifice. One way is no surprise because the serpent cult is one of the oldest in the world. The Club of Rome membership surely showed that there were Templars, that they were Knights of Malta, and that the American government is overwhelmingly controlled by the Knights of Malta. You know, with your heads of CIA and Skull and Bones connection. Wherever you find a Skull and Bones connection, you'll find Knights of Malta. Wherever you find Opus Dei, you'll find Knights of Malta. They're all considered Catholic organizations, but that's again false. They own, Catholicism is just a mere marquee out front. So the good little Catholic boys and girls will imagine that these are philanthropic organizations that your money contributes to and all, and won't ever go anything deeper than that. But obviously their antiquity alone, and the fact that I keep bringing out, is they were allied with some of the most bizarre, sinister groups in the Middle East, out of the time of the Crusades. These Knights Templar were assigned and aligned with some very, very powerful groups like the Italian Mercs and the Amalfi and also the Silesian Pirates. And that is why the Skull and Bones use that Skull and Bones, because that's what you find on bottles of poison in medicine. The very idea that doctors used to wear the white robes, the white, is all based in their symbolism. You're born in white and you die in black. Well, that's the Knights Templar symbols. They got you at both fucking ends, dude. You don't know nothing about secret societies. You're born to the white-coated Templar and you die when they haul you ass into the graveyard in black. Somebody knows something about symbolism, I'll tell you.
Since time began, the snake has been symbolic of evil, destruction, death. Out of the slime and darkness it comes to inflict its life-destroying poison on the careless, the unwary, the unprotected. No sane person would deliberately expose himself to its venom. No intelligent person would venture within striking distance of its fangs. Yet today, thousands of young people are flirting with a poison every bit as deadly as that of the snake.
This is the official cross of the Swedish Order of Freemasons.
So this you can find in old rune stones that are thousands of years old. So this symbol is very...
This symbol?
Yeah, this symbol.
One thing that jumps out at me about this symbol, this is what Michael put me onto, is he said, just look at this symbol, okay? It has nothing to do with a cross the way you think it does. It's actually an unfolded pyramid seen from above.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
If you look at it as that. If we fold the corners in, you'll get a pyramid, and it actually looks like 4 pyramids pointing to the center, or 4 directional arrows pointing into the center.
Yes, of course.
And I'm thinking the center. Journey to the center of the earth, the underworld, right? I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, but that's perfectly true, because the hidden world is a very hierarchical system also. You have the A, it's the symbol of Aset. And they are, ser means to see also. They all ser. The aser sees everything. And if it turn the word aser backward, it becomes a resa, which means to rise. But that's the magic with this linguistic program we get from the north here. This is truly the knowledge of kings.
We are in this, what I really think is the battle at the Black Gate, the great battle of our time. We are in a spiritual war. We have been in a spiritual war for millennia. And it seems to me, and this is, based on a lot of the astrological dynamics that are at work, that this is like the final battle. I have a sense that this is culminating right now, and that this next 3 years, from 2022 to 2025, when Pluto finally fully enters Aquarius, that we are going to be doing battle. The journey to the underworld, as it is represented, particularly in different myths, but because I love the Lord of the Rings so much, we saw in that story Aragorn, after he receives the reforged blade to become the king, what is the first thing he has to do? He has to go to the underworld. So this underworld journey is really a process of metamorphosis that every individual has to do in terms of their own inner work, their inner transformation, becoming a whole human being, conscious human being. It is a metamorphosis. It is like the caterpillar becoming the butterfly, or the snake shedding its skin. So these symbols and images are around us, and especially right now. You can follow this back, generation to generation to generation. I mean, ancient wounds that have never been dealt with, trauma that gets passed on because nobody was ever able to actually bring it to consciousness and work through it and overcome that bondage to terror, rage, and grief, and to all the mechanisms, the psychological defenses that we use to cover that up, to keep papering that over. It's like, oh, I don't want to go down there. Don't want to feel those unpleasant feelings. There is some wound that has not been dealt with, that's been festering in the dark corner of the basement for generations and generations. And we now have the tools to do that. And we have all the mythology that shows us exactly what's going on and what we need to do. So all the tools are there for us now in a way that's never happened before.